Okay, this is going to be the fastest intro in the series, but going forward, most of these video will not have much background music due to me not wanting to deal with any copyright shenanigans. Also, I will be hosting some Madness Combat characters poll so that you can vote which character you guys want a retrospective video on. Anyways, enjoy the video. The Auditor is the main antagonist of the Auditor Saga, and the Madness Combat theory as a whole, first debuting in Madness Combat 6.5, as the leader of the main antagonistic force of the series, called the AAHW, and the master of the Improbability Drive, a device capable of bending reality to the user's will. But if you want to know about this shadowy and mysterious figure more clearer, we need to go back to the start of his story. Beyond the realms of Nevada and any mortal conflict, there exists an entity called the Machine, a metaphysical construct of an incomprehensible scale, and a member of the higher power, a medium that are responsible to some of Hank's revival and Tricky's zombification. The Machine is among the most powerful members of the higher power, only being behind its sibling, the Maker. The Machine has some kind of bond over all the residents in Nevada, and forces them to retell the Machine's story, or else Nevada will be destroyed. So, the Machine still needs help with its craft, so then it has other form of higher powers to be both its steward and assistance in writing its own story for Nevada. Those being the employers. Sometimes later, a Generation 1 grunt named Phobos was hired by the employers to initiate a project called Project Nexus for mass production of residents in Nevada and improving the lives of Nevada, utilizing self, aka the thing that made oneself their own identity, and cloning technology. But Phobos would later betray his charter with the employers due to him wanting to get all the power from the project for himself and join the ranks of the employers. Because of this, the employers resorted to hiring both Hank J. Wimbledon and Jebediah Kristoff to take down the project and prevent Phobos' influence further damaging Nevada. The employers are important to the existence of Nevada, of course, but one stood out from the rest, that being the Auditor. So, he and the employers hired Hank and his team to take down the project. A little bit before this, the Auditor has created the AAHW, an organization for the sole purpose of killing Hank and his allies, who he sees as a threat to reality. And this action shows that the Auditor is different from his fellow employers, with the other three would rather not interfere with the mortal's action, seeing it to be ridiculous to interfere. But the Auditor would rather not sit there and see reality being destroyed by some mere mortals. So the Auditor created the AHW and hired the Nevadians to help him take down Hank, and soon become as some sort of spokespersons for the employers due to his constant action of picking fight with the mortals of Nevada. Example being when he sent Phobos a letter threatening the latter to deliver on the Auditor's request, or else Phobos would face some repercussions from him and his fellow employers. This kind of reaction from him might be due to his role of being the Auditor, making sure things goes right according to plan. But due to Hank and his allies keep screwing it up, it leads to the creation of the AAHW as a mean to both act as an endless access to manpower and to try and keep Hank and his allies at bay. Also, this game hinted at a relationship between the Auditor and his minions, due to them still attacking Hank and his allies in the game, despite them being supposedly on the same side, as confirmed by Crinkles that the Auditor do not use fear on his minions, as that aren't an effective method on the Vadians. But due to the Auditor being a member of the Employer, a powerful group of beings Most of the AAHW members just stay out of the auditor's ways and try to appease his need for their own benefits. That's why the AAHW still attack both Hank and his allies to appease their boss and the auditor not properly keeping them in loop, implying that his views on the Nevadians are very low as with the other employers. Later, after the Nexus core has been taken down, the employers, including the auditor, appear before Jebediah and the sheriff, which Jeb seems to know that it usually don't mean the best of news for them. The employers then started to talk, opening with "Stand down, mortal" by the Stygian, implying that the employer do not see Jeb as a real god, and only as just a mortal who got lucky, a testament to how low they view the mortal Nevadian, backing up with lines spoken by both the conductor and the Stygian shortly after. Later in the conversation, the conductor told Jeb that Hank will be taken care of and will no longer be Jeb's concern, implying that they know that Hank will die before Jeb even get back to the main Nexus core science tower. Jeb would later ask what the employers want by showing up here. The auditor responds to him directly, saying that there's a new project waiting for him, and that when times come, Jeb will fit right in, and demand that he do not fail them. This project possibly are for Jeb to hunt down and kill Hank permanently with his binary sword, as seen in MC5, implying that the employer know about Hank's threat on reality, possibly from the auditor, or how Hank betrayed his friends so he can merge Nevada with the other place, and might even know about the auditor meddling with the mortal Nevadian, but choose to have the auditor learn the hard way of not lowering himself to the mortals of Nevada. And as the evidence throughout the series, the auditor sure did learn it a very hard way. Before going further into the auditor's story, there might be some needed context. The auditor has given an improbability drive to the sheriff. The reason for this is unknown, but might be to help the sheriff protecting himself against Hank's killing spree, or act as a prototype test for the upcoming improbability drive, due to it not showing up on Deimos PDA, which only shows 3 drives instead of 4, which are hashtag S001, 002, and 003. The auditor also hired Tricky the Clown, whom he has given a portable improbability drive, or also known as hashtag S003, to help him and the AAHW in taking down Hank, due to the clown's past rivalries with the ninja, unknowing about the clown's chaotic nature. The auditor, of course, also created 2 authors improbability drives. The first one, also known as hashtag S001, is the primary one, a more complex version compared to the sheriff's one, and a more powerful one due to having control over the whole reality in Nevada. And the second one, also known as hashtag S002, that is located inside the auditor's body, possibly a source to some of the auditor's power that was shown in the series. Though he didn't appear physically, you can see his poster on the walls of the building, which the poster seems to be the auditor canceling a party that was going on in the building, due to the ongoing problems with Hank and his allies, and will only let the next party happen if the problem is taken care of, showing how strict the auditor is to his minions, and possibly how little he cares about his minions' well-being, with him giving them no breaks, no fun, and no things that aren't directly helping the auditor taking care of the ninja's problems. But this also shown how much influence he has over the AAHW, and building him up to be the mysterious boss who everyone don't want to get in his way. The auditor appeared midway through the episode, after Jeb quit the AAHW, and presumably the job that was thrusted upon him by the auditor, knowingly making him an enemy of the auditor, due to him basically failing the job that the employers gave it to him, and disobeying their commands. But before the auditor can do anything about this, he glanced at the other monitor of the hashtag S001, and see that Hank was being revived by the hashtag S003 improbability drive that he gave to Tricky, completely going off track of the mission, which is to kill Hank permanently. Not long after, the clown messaged the auditor telling the employer that it can do whatever it wants, and the auditor cannot stop him. Due to the auditor losing both of the AAHW best shots in defeating Hank, he has to turn to upgrading his minions, knowing that most of them are Generations 04 Nevadians, which do not have their own purpose, and very easily manipulated into following the employer. So, the auditor might have overestimated how tough the G04 might be, as shown soon after that though the agents got upgraded, they are still very easily being taken care of by both Deimos and Sanford. This episode is the beginning of the hatred the auditor has for Tricky and foreshadows the threat that the clown poses to the auditor, and also setting up the conflicts between Jeebus, the savior of Nevada, and the auditor of the employers. The auditor appeared in the last minutes of the episode, showing up with the hashtag S001 improbability drive screen, telling the auditor about the hashtag S003 improbability drive activity, and also the living status of the Nevadians, with Hank and Tricky being terminated and the hashtag S003 drive being destroyed. The auditor shifts the advanced training lever to max level, which increased the ATP engineer, which are the more tech-based version of the agents, and the ATP soldat, which are the more combat-based version, which the lever increased both of these production speed. This decision might be due to him learning his lesson after losing his two best shots at defeating Hank in the last episode, and might also be from him knowing that after both Hank and Tricky being eliminated, that means that Jeebus is the last one he has to take care of. So he upgraded the production speed of the ATP so that the AHW will stood more of a chance in stalling Jeebus or any upcoming threat that might emerge after the ninja and the clown's death. Before the screen flashes black, we got a glimpse at the new Mac agent, showing how fast the AHW are at developing and improving their armies, possibly thanks to the leftover tech the auditor might found from the Nexus core after it collapsed, and have the ATP engineer repaired it to be functional again. The auditor in this episode learned to have backup plans to his plans, so that when the most essential part of the main plans falls apart, he wouldn't got too much setback, as evident by him upgrading the ATP production speed and magnifying some of his minions to be stronger. The auditor didn't appear physically in this episode, but we are shown him texting to Soldat after one of the Soldats said that they were going to get Deimos and Sanford. The auditor tried to warn them that they are no match against the duo, due to both of them not receiving the upgrade that the engineer prepared for them, but the two Soldats left before receiving the message. The text by the auditor might imply that though he increased the production speed of the Soldats, he still needs their physical ability to be improved upon by the engineers, showing more of the auditor's careful side by him trying to make sure that his minions are capable enough to not be shut down instantly when they try to go in against the opposing side. But the upgrading process was a failure due to it halting the ATP production speed and the Soldat units still being taken care of as easy as before. And due to the engineer operating the machine died before finishing it up, the system was unstable and tried to fix itself before it got blown up by Deimos, stopping the production of the ATP for the time being, throwing another screws into the auditor's plan, and giving him a massive setback due to his army being significantly weaker now. But the auditor doesn't got much time to reflect on this failure due to a certain mortal creeping up on him. Well, to be damned, tried to breach into the auto place and bring Hank back to life. He was greeted by the auditor's messages, sensing the breach due to the auto place being kind of a hell in the Madness Combat universe, which are connected to the auditor due to him being a gateway to hell as Nevada knows it. So the auditor warned to be damned that he was not successful in this mission, and that Hank will be remained to be retained in the auto place by the retainers that the auditor has placed there. The Retainers is a powerful being that seems to utilize the otherworldly powers to keep those who try to escape the autoplace to remain there. So, the auditor don't got any time to be dealing with the hacker or Hank personally right now. The auditor, seeing that Jeebus are making his way through the AHW army, knows that it's time for Jeb to be taken care of. So, to increase the chance of Jeebus being defeated, the auditor infected the savior, causing him to occasionally cough up blood and presumably weakening him. Though the auditor seems to be too confident in the infection capability, as evident by him moving on to download a Mac Agent V3 generator, possibly soon after he started the infection. Due to percentage saying 38% and not really paying attention to Jeff's activity and movement. But this proves to be a mistake, due to Jeff being able to destroy a machine that clones multiple grunts for the AAHW army, slowing down and weakening the auditor's army even more and angering the employer, who decided to take matters into his own hands and personally deal with Jeb, due to the Savior's godlike powers and capability being a threat to his plans as a whole. After Jeebus had made his way through the AAHW members of the first building and gotten outside, he spotted the auditor waiting for Jeb from his faraway building. The auditor then proceeded to light up his head flare, possibly implying that the employers are taking this issue very seriously than before, and shoot his minigun at Jeb with a sniper accuracy. But the auditor underestimated the Halo's power that Jeb possessed, allowing Jeb to dodge all of the shots from the auditor, angering the employers even more, due to him now being constantly outplayed by a mere mortal. The auditor then meets Jeb and goes to fight him. This brief fight showed that though the auditor might be one of the most powerful higher powers in Nevada, the employer still lacks in some fighting skills, due to the auditor being unable to land any hits on Jeb at a close range, forcing the auditor to utilize his incorporeal ability and fight at a more long range. The auditor successfully injured Jeebus with his MP5 case, weakening Jeebus even more, before the employer disappeared to await for the next opportunity on the Savior. With Jeebus being distracted by the primary improbability drive activity, the auditor appeared before disarming Jeb from his long-range weapon and summoning AT4, fatally wounding Jeb in the process. But he also made a mistake, due to shooting the AT4 at Jeb while the Savior is making a bullet deflecting shield. The explosion are only mostly contained at that position, damaging the primary improbability drive and initiating the normality restoration in the process, resulting in the halt of the download process of the Mac V3 generator and normality being restored in Nevada, throwing another 2 screws into the auditor's plan and setting him back even further than before, due to the primary improbability drive being destroyed now, and his army possibly being even weaker because of Jeb, showing that though as careful as the auditor might want to be, his carelessness outshined the carefulness more, a trait that's been with him ever since MPN2, as shown with him constantly trying to pick fight with the Nevadians, lowering himself and getting into this mess in the first place. Everything that's gone wrong up to this point for the auditor are all his own doings. After that, a sky started to crack before a blue lightning strikes down into the building, engulfing both the auditor and Jeb in a white flash. Due to the auditor incorporeal ability, he survived the lightning that killed Jeb. The auditor are now a lot more serious than before, due to this being a massive setback for his plans, as evident by him having more flames coming from his body, possibly from the improbability drive inside him, being more active due to it being the last one left, and the auditor trying to use its full power. But the auditor noticed something that will make these setbacks less significant, which is the halo. The auditor knows how powerful the halo is, as he has seen from fighting Jeb. So, the auditor took the halo to improve his ability even further. The auditor returned to one of his base of operation that houses a Mac V3 inside. Before entering the base, the auditor decided to utilize the halo. The ability that the auditor utilized is presumably a combination between the human eyes erasure lasers that Jeb used in the previous episode and the reanimating power that Jeb constantly used in the Sheriff Saga, but this time with a twist, which is the reanimating ability by the auditor now actually enhanced the person he uses on, making up the failure that was the upgrade from MC 7.5. The This enhancement improves their fighting capability and presumably their physical status. The auditor then entered the base due to the employer being in a bad mood. He interrupted a card game by slamming the table down before ordering the 3 agents that were playing to go take care of the problems, before slicing up a grunt, possibly because the grunt is just a grunt, which the auditor deems useless at this point of the plan because of his newly enhanced power from the halo that he cannot afford to throw away some of his minions, reverting himself back to being around MC 5.5 level, where he's too in over his head to see that his action might have some unintended consequences. The auditor then enters the room where the Mech V3 resides, then proceeds to activate the Mech with his newfound ability, possibly enhancing some of his stat in the process, making up the fact that he didn't get to fully download the Mech V3 generator. Later, the auditor and the Mech appears, showing that the Mech is now able to summon a weapon just like the auditor. So, the auditor arrived at an unfortunate time, due to Hank is now revived and in a new semi-Mech form. The auditor then proceeds to disappear, leaving the Mech agent to fight Hank, presumably to see Hank's capability and danger to devise his strategy. Shortly after Hank killed the Mech agent, the auditor appears to surprise attack Sanford. After pushing Sanford against a door and showing his own powers to both Hank and Sanford, the employer absorbed all the agent's corpses and empowered himself to be more prepared against the duo and possibly to take care of them even faster. Continuing on, after the last episode, Hank and Sanford engages in a fight with the Auditor, but is incredibly outmatched due to the immense power that the Halo gave to the employer. The Auditor seems to be enjoying his new powers very much, due to him only using the power given by the Halo, instead of usually summoning a weapon to fight. The Auditor also seemed to be flexing his superior ability to the two, with him switching sides, going in and out of his incorporeal form around the two, and kind of playing games of dodging his attacks with them, before deciding to summon the gun to try and shoot Hank down. The Auditor successfully severed Hank's newly acquired crustacean arm, weakening the ninja for the time being, before being distracted by Sanford. Seeing that the ninja is down, the Auditor shifts his focus on killing Sanford, but this proved to be another mistake, due to this allowing Hank to grab him from behind and temporarily take the Halo away from the Auditor. The Halo rejected Hank before giving Hank a new hand, improving Hank's hand-to-hand combat and intelligence in this form, and a new lightning punch ability. Seeing this isn't good, the Auditor tried to shoot Hank down before being interrupted by Sanford again, knowing that Hank is more important to deal with than Sanford. Due to the recent events, the Auditor let his minions deal with Sanford before shifting his full focus on Hank entirely. So, the Auditor still seems to underestimate Hank in this form, due to him still trying to fight Hank at a more close range. After his attempt failed, the Auditor switched his tactics to use his Halo power as a long-range weapon to make Hank back away from him so he can retrieve the spear and build a platform to retreat for a moment, before making other two pillars and a hole at the bottom of the platform for Hank and Sanford to go in and buy some time for the employer. But out of the ground, two blue lightnings appear and struck the Auditor, with text saying rejection incompatible. This might be because of when Hank touched the Halo, it compromised the Halo compatibility with the Auditor and starting to wound the employer. Seeing that the Halo is able to affect him and starting to reject him, it forces the Auditor to retreat and see a way to maintain their compatibility with the Halo. The Auditor, sensing danger and dissected that the reason for the Halo rejecting him is because of the system overburden, possibly referring to how the Halo is channeling this dissonance energy from the other place to help it maintain its power. Going back onto the fact of when Hank touching the Halo, that resulting in compromising the Halo, this might be due to it channeling too much of Hank's dissonance energy, due to Hank being freshly revived from the mech chamber, which presumably utilized some of the dissonance energy. This causes the Halo to contain too much dissonance energy for the auditor to be compatible with it. Having learned that their compatibility with the Halo has been compromised, the auditor ran into the AAHW base, panicking before deciding to absorb the two agents in front of him, presumably trying to empower himself to be able to withstand the lightning, and kind of putting the band-aid on the Halo being overburdened on the employer's body. Seeing that this can somewhat work out for himself, the auditor decides to go find more body to absorb by looking over the Nevada terrains on top of the pillars he just created. Unfortunately for the employer, Sanford and Hank already made through the hordes of agents, forcing the auditor to face them before empowering himself even more. But this time, the auditor seems to be more confident that he might be able to take the two on, before that confidence got smashed by Hank's new lightning ability, inflicting wounds on the auditor, possibly angering the auditor even more, due to a mortal being able to directly damage him with just a mere fist. The auditor decides to absorb the AHW corpses that Sanford and Hank just killed, to be able to withstand Hank's ability and empowering himself even more. Seeing that his empowerment are still ineffective against Hank's new arm strengths and powers, the auditor decided to absorb all the nearby dead Nevadians. But in this blind attempt resulted in a big mistake, because the employer absorbed the clown's dead body. A body that already contains some of the dissonance energy from the improbability drive almost as much as the auditor himself. The auditor, not fully learning about him thinking about his action before doing it, absorbed the clown's body. Due to both the auditor and the clown containing massive amount of dissonance energy and both containing an improbability drive, the two begins to clash. Due to the employer's body already being weakened and targeted by the lightnings from the Halo, the clown successfully stole the auditor's body and powers, inverting the auditor, bringing the employer to the other place and granting the clown access to both the Halo's power and the gateway to hell. The episode started with text saying, "The Thorn Large Merge in reality is infected," possibly referring to the clown stealing the auditor's body due to it being a gateway to hell. It then cuts to the auditor's hell, a dimension similar to purgatory we would later see with Deadmau5 Adventures, but smaller, and only created by the auditor for a more curated type of sinners. This dimension is shown with red sky, similar to the one in Nevada. After the auditor's reign begins, red essence falling through the sky, which are possibly selves of those certain types of sinners, and floating rocks/platforms everywhere, similar to the terrains of the purgatory, but both are still distinct from each other. This dimension seems to serve as the employer's very own substrata, as said in MC12 with To Be Damned Resurrection Anchor. We soon seen a red essence falling onto a platform, forming into a being. It is unknown whose self this is. Some viewers theorize it to be Jeb's self, due to it coughing up blood and later lightning ability. But this is unlikely, due to this being a dimension created by the auditor inside the auditor, and seems to only be accessible via being absorbed by the employer or being allowed in by the employer himself. And also due to Crinkles stating that Jeebus went to regular hell after he died. Other things is just a couple of damn soul that the auditor kept away from the clown after the employer's body got stolen. Other things is either part of the auditor or a servant of the auditor, because we later seen it trying to pull a being similar to itself closer with its own lightning ability before being overpowered by the lightnings, then jumps through the barrier as some sort of a response to an unwanted presence in the auditor's hell. But it is still unclear what both of these are, other than being the show's representation of selves inside the auditor's bodies. After the mysterious being jumped through the barrier, we are taken back to the aftermath of the last episode, showing that the clown is able to revive itself via the auditor's body, and possibly gain the ability to access the auditor's hell, as shown with the clown being able to summon skeleton armies bodies from underground, and later being able to summon the AAHW members in the Auditor's Hell. Soon after, the clown was able to send both Hank and Sanford into the Auditor's Hell, the same way he summoned the skeleton armies. In the Auditor's Hell, the new demonic Tricky summons the AAHW members that the Auditor absorbed in MC-10. After Hank and Sanford took care of the members, the Auditor appears in a spike form, similar to the spike the retainers will see used in MC-9.5. The Auditor told the two to get out and to go kill the clown, and in the process stopping its rampage, before presumably using the little power he has left to separate Hank from Sanford. The Auditor later appeared with a spike in front of Hank, with his appearance now being similar to his pre-MC8, where he lacked the fire and being severely damaged from the lightning before his body got stolen. The Auditor, seeing that there's no other way for him to be able to take down Tricky in his current form, alone with his minions, the employer decided to use Hank as a tool to defeat Tricky by impaling Hank with his spike so that he wouldn't resist much before sapping Hank with his power and then bringing both of them into the ground. Throughout the episode, there's two posters being plastered around the presumably Hell's replica of an AAHW base, where it both said things about Tricky not being belong here, ordering the inhabitants to get rid of the clown, and saying how the clown is ruining the dimension, similar to how it ruined Nevada. This poster shows how the Auditor are still fighting back with the little control he has left over his own hell, and referencing his own concern about Hank and his allies being threat to reality of Nevada as a whole, the concern that spiral out of control and sparks this madness. Later, the Auditor in spike form manages to catch up to the clown before releasing Hank out from himself, with Hank now have a new restored arms by the Auditor and fully healed up. The reason why the Auditor are mostly appear in spike form might be due to him avoiding Tricky tracking him down and for him to be able to operate in secrecy. The Auditor later assists Hank in injuring the clown by filling the platform Hank's gonna use with spikes. The Auditor later appeared once more to analyze the horde that clown summons on Hank and getting the strength that the clown has in this form, seeing that the horde right now are too strong for Hank to fight barehanded. The Auditor accessed into Hank's fragment, absorbing some of it before giving Hank the violence he required, with the dragon sword similar to the one from MC4 but with a red glow around the blade, signifying the Auditor's influence and without the tie spelling, and an SCR 5.56 Raider. The two red entity appeared once more to prevent Tricky from escaping before the clown was slashed by the dragon sword, ending the clown's control over the Auditor's hell and its short-lived reigns on Nevada. Back to the real world Nevada, Tricky's skulls explode, killing the clown and dropping the halo onto the ground, with Hank's and Sanford's bodies surfacing up from the underworld. The Auditor emerges from the clown's skull, still with the scar he got, but now regains his fire, before retrieving the halo back to himself, with the Auditor succeeding in killing all the problems he had left in the real world and gaining both his body and the halo back. The Auditor utters, "Finally." The episode started with the improbable screen, possibly by To Be Damned, showing Nevada with text saying that is a place that was never meant to be, possibly implying its odd existence and the infinite entropy it has at all the borders tax that was later mentioned in the text. The text also mentioned the higher powers governing Nevada, possibly referring to the machine and the employers, including the Auditor that oversees Nevada. We later seen the Auditor examining Hank's body after expurgation, presumably trying to analyze if the ninja is truly dead, with the text that the Auditor can possibly see appearing saying that Hanks is reported to be dead, and Hank's charter being revoked, with a new one being assigned with Do Not Waver. Both of these actions are presumably by the machine, telling To Be Damned about what happened and what comes after. The Auditor later tried to presumably take control over Sanford, due to the ability's visual being similar to the ability he used to enhance the ATP engineers and reviving the dead agent, before being told by the text to stop meddling, referencing that all of this that has happened ever since the tricky stuff are all caused by the Auditor's meddlings with the mortals of Nevada, and lowering himself to the levels of mere mortal Nevadians, with the Auditor creating the AHW to prevent Hank's and ally threat on reality, which actually created chains of events leading to the clown getting the halo and becoming an even bigger threat on reality than Hank's and allies has ever been, as seen in the last episode. The Auditor later appeared in a shadow form with his spikes accompanying him, chasing after Sanford, and tried to reroute the grunt to him, presumably to use his unkillableness to his advantage, but the Auditor still fails to do so. This purgatory that Sanford ended up in seems to be just another part of the Auditor's hell, as said by the texts that appear after Sanford got touches by To Be Damned Resurrection Anchor, with the text mentioning the employee substrata. The Auditor later appeared in his physical form in front of Sanford, but before the employer can do anything, he got crushed by two rocks, possibly killing him temporarily. Him getting crushed might be an action from either the machine or one of the members of the employers, trying to stop the Auditor from making things worse by picking fight with the mortals Nevadians due to the events of MC-11, or by To Be Damned manipulating the terrains as seen with him making rock for his machine to arrive on to be able to properly retrieve Sanford. The Auditor later appeared in an unknown space, with him being diagnosed with Furious, possibly angered by his failed attempt at taking control and taking care of Sanford simultaneously, before issuing, possibly to either his fellow members of the employers or the machine, that To Be Damned must die from his action of manipulating the afterlife and resurrecting the people that the Auditor deemed as a threat to reality. The episode ended on the text saying the occurrence lines are converging. This might be referring to how the underworld and the real world are merging, possibly due to Be Damned constant resurrection and or Tricky's action from MC-11, proving the Auditor's concern to be true at long last, but for all the different reasons, and mostly being from the Auditor himself. The Auditor, though are a powerful being and a member of a powerful race, is proven to be his own worst enemy time and times again throughout the series, and even though the Auditor learned from his mistake multiple times, it seems to not stick with him, with these three things being apparent from the Auditor's action. The Auditor's own ego, as evident with when he underestimating Jeb's true threat due to his will on the Savior being just a grunt who got lucky to be more than a mere mortal. It causes the normality restoration process to be activated and the primary improbability drive to be destroyed, and how he's still trying to go along with his plans of dealing with the mere mortals of Nevada, even though it was unwise and was told to stop. Second, the Auditor's thinking capability. Building from his own ego, the Auditor never really think long term and never really have backup plans for his main one, as seen with him resorting to just upgrading his minions after he lost his two best shots as defeating Hank, and how he basically at a lost cause when his main building and the primary improbability drive blows up, if it weren't for the halo. And lastly, 3. The Auditor's tunnel visioning. When the Auditor was presented with an opportunity to take care of something, he will tunnel visioning only on that opportunity, and with only one way to achieve that opportunity, as seen with him trying to use the leftover tech from Phobos to create and improve the AHW, just for taking care of Hank and his allies, and him continuing with the plans, even though it's evident that it will only just bring losses to the Auditor, and bringing him at a possible stalemate. And unlike Hank's vengeance, the Auditors aren't really ones to think of a clever plan or idea to help him in a situation that he has to actively take part in, such as when he had to fight both Hank and Sanford. All this culminating to the mess of MC-11 and MC10 and become a somewhat self-fulfilling prophecy of the Auditor's own concern about the reality being threatened from Hanks and his allies. And due to him being unwise in the aspects of planning as a whole, as shown with the 3 previous points, it causes the situation for the Auditor to be worsened in the process. The Auditor is a very interesting character. He doesn't have much revealed, he's mostly a mysterious one, so we don't really know how his story would end up. Either he would win, or he would lose, or he would draw with the protagonist, we don't know, and can't really judge from just his role in the series. So he's very powerful, he's still balanced by his own unwiseness and his own decision consequences. And that's what makes his story and appearance on screen very entertaining and interesting. And that is how he's the representation of the beauty from the hidden lore of Madness Combat.
Hey, what's up guys, it's me Asleep from the video you just watched. Again, I'm sorry if I missed the last month upload because, I was sick, my school just started, so yeah, taking a long time for me to adjust my schedule. But yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. Sorry if it's a little not as much in depth in the character as my 3 previous video. The auditor doesn't really have much info about his personality that much, so I can only go based off what I saw in the series and what I read. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. You can support me by joining the membership. Also, I will actually be taking a break from Madness Combat Retrospective for now. I got a new series that I want to do Retrospective on, which I think you guys are gonna love it. So yeah, see y'all next time in like a month or so, I guess. See ya.